Aloha, inspired moneymaker. Thanks for joining me today. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer or listener, welcome back. I'm so excited that you're here with us. Money is emotional. We like to think that we make financial decisions based on logic, but in reality, biases, emotions, and subconscious beliefs often drive our choices, sometimes in ways that work against us. It's not just about what you know, it's about how you behave. And behavior is hard to change, even for really intelligent people. Most of us don't make money decisions on spreadsheets all the time. We tend to make them at the dinner table, in stressful moments, and under the weight of past experiences. So today we're going to dig into the psychology of money, exploring the emotions and behaviors that influence financial decisions. Our expert panel, Saundra Davis, Martha Menard, and Mariko Gordon, are going to break down cognitive biases, money scripts, and emotional spending, among other things. I hope that we're going to answer questions like, why do we hold on to losing investments? Why do we spend money that we don't have? And how can we align our money with our values? So stay tuned. This conversation might just change the way that you think about money forever. Before we jump in, this episode is brought to you by my financial advisory firm, Runnymede Capital Management. I want to invite you to take advantage of our 3-minute financial plan. You can go to inspiredmoney.fm/getplan, answer a few questions. It just takes 3 minutes, and you'll get a personalized snapshot to help kickstart your financial journey. So don't miss the opportunity. Let's welcome in our expert panel. I'll start with Saundra Davis. And you're going to see that our panelists today are a lot of things. Saundra is a good example of that. She's a master certified coach, master's in financial planning. She has a coach training program of accredited personal financial coaches. She's a financial behavior specialist. She's a U.S. Navy veteran, financial coach, educator, consultant, and she's nationally recognized for her expertise in financial coaching, financial therapy, and addressing the racial wealth gap. She's founder of Sage Financial Solutions, a training organization, and she serves as the director of financial planning programs at Golden Gate University, where she develops and facilitates financial capability programs and coaching certifications to promote equitable access to high-quality financial guidance for all. Welcome, and I have to mention, you're also a mindfulness practitioner and certified teacher. How about that?
Yes, Andy, I've lived many years. I mean, I've become all of these things over decades. So yes, thank you. It's really great to be here with you.
I love it. And you're sitting at a winery today.
I'm actually at a winery. The disruptions to my home today made it impossible for me to do this conversation with y'all from my home. So I got in the car and I came up to the winery that my son manages in Rodeo, California. Yes, there is a little town called Rodeo, California, and that's where I am. There's a little winery up here.
I love it. Our next panelist, Martha Menard, PhD. She's a behavioral scientist, financial coach, and researcher. Her background is in clinical psychology and behavioral medicine as a principal consultant at Cascadia Financial Health and an adjunct professor at Golden Gate University. She helps people to build healthier relationships with money through coaching, education, and evidence-based financial strategies. And with this theme of being a lot of things, you're also a licensed massage therapist. Martha, welcome.
I am. I actually have a Lifetime Achievement Award for that from the American Massage Therapy Association. But I don't currently practice anymore, except on my husband.
Very cool. Very cool. And Mariko Gordon is back on the show, CFA, fairly recently minted a certified financial planner. She's the CEO of Uzume LLC, where she provides financial planning and consulting services to individuals and families. She previously founded and built Daruma Capital Management into a $2.5 billion firm with a distinctive and non-traditional approach to investing. With over 30 years of experience as a small cap stock picker, She now helps clients navigate personal finance, entrepreneurship, and life transitions, drawing from her expertise in business investing and her multicultural heritage. Mariko, you've been on the show before. Welcome back. You're also a poet, hypnotist, and hula dancer.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's great to be back. It's so much fun.
Do you use hypnosis?
We're
Yeah.
a talented group.
Martha, I'm sorry, you asked a question?
Oh, I just said we're a very talented group here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I do use hypnosis. And also just understanding some of the neuroscience that support, which explains why hypnosis works, can also help with figuring out the psychology of our money stuff. So there's actually a lot more of an overlap than one may think.
I'm so excited to have all of you here. I'm your host, financial advisor, and Hawaiian musician. We are all multifaceted, which I think is going to bring lots of perspectives and richness to this discussion about money and psychology. Let's go straight into segment one.
Cognitive biases significantly impact financial decisions, often leading to misjudgments. Common biases like confirmation bias, overconfidence, loss aversion, and anchoring shape how we interpret financial information and act upon it. For example, confirmation bias leads investors to focus on data that aligns with their beliefs, ignoring contradictory evidence. Overconfidence bias results in frequent high-risk trading, often with negative outcomes. Loss aversion keeps investors holding on to losing stocks too long, hoping for a rebound, while anchoring bias skews value perception based on initial prices. Awareness is the first step in counteracting these biases. By recognizing patterns, diversifying investments, consulting outside perspectives, and applying structured decision-making methods, individuals can make more rational financial choices. Techniques such as dollar-cost averaging and engaging with advisors help counter the emotional influence on decisions, paving the way toward better investment outcomes and financial stability.
Martha, why do so many of us make irrational decisions when it comes to money? And why are cognitive biases so difficult to overcome?
Because I think financial decisions, you mentioned earlier, fundamentally, decisions we make about money are really emotional decisions. And we just use reason and logic as the window dressing to rationalize the emotional decision we've already made. And they're very immediate, very rapid.
Saundra, your thoughts, like these cognitive biases, do they also contribute to the racial wealth gap that we see?
Yeah, absolutely. And to build on what Dr. M is saying is that so often we don't even know that we have them. I think that's the biggest factor and the deepest awareness for me. So often we don't even know that we have the bias. And so we're not looking out for it. I noticed in your intro, you said that, sometimes very intelligent people still struggle with the psychology of money because I would say the more intelligent you are, the more you can actually fall victim to some of the biases because we think we know, we think we've got it. And usually that's based on our past beliefs that, we might not even know are there. So when we think about it in the context of the racial wealth gap, Black people in the diaspora, literally all over the world experience a different relationship with resources because of the history of the African diaspora. And so when we have an embedded struggle with self-worth based on what other people have put upon us, it can certainly cause us to feel, it shows up in ways like we have to do twice as much to get half as much. We have to be twice as good to have half the opportunities. So those types of things become part of our DNA, if you will. And then we behave in ways that maybe are harmful by believing something and having a bias that isn't necessarily not only the actual truth, but isn't even really our truth.
So where do we start?
And
we have to identify what potential biases are so that we can identify where we are right now?
So I think Martha was going to jump in with something, but I was going to leave it to Martha and Mariko to say a little bit more about that.
I'd love to hear what Mariko has to say about that.
So I have actually.
I know. Go ahead.
No, you gave me the opportunity and I just leapt at it. So I will say my piece quickly and get out of the way. I have a very practical suggestion, Andy, because Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. I think that's a great way to understand things and to also create the kind of gap in self-awareness that allows you to maybe catch yourself before you fall into something. But I think it's a really accessible book, and it's a great combination of both explaining the psychology and our brains are wired for the evolution of our brains has trailed the evolution of our society and technology, with also just practical investment takes on it.
So your assignment is to go read the book.
Yes.
Good. Martha, your thought?
And I just wanted to point out that one of the things that also can make people kind of fall back on cognitive biases when they're making financial decisions is when they're under stress. If you are a person who is under-resourced, not only the cognitive biases that you might hold, but just the way that stress affects our brains can make us make poor financial decisions. There was a really well-known psychology study involving children, the Marshmallow test. Are you familiar with that? Basically,
I am, but please explain.
So basically, the researchers gave children one marshmallow, told them that they were going to leave the room for a few minutes. If they could resist eating the marshmallow, that they would get a second one if they waited. And it was a study about delayed gratification. And then they followed up with those kids later in life. And the kids who could delay gratification and sit on their hands instead of eating the marshmallow right away did better kind of across the board. There were some issues from a research perspective with that. But one of the things about that study, as people have looked at it a little more critically, there was a tendency to blame people for not being able to delay gratification. But if you've grown up with financial instability, it can make a lot of sense to go ahead and, eat the marshmallow that's in front of you instead of, hoping that there's going to be a second one there when your experience has been that, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. So, I think as financial professionals, we want to be careful about labeling people. And sometimes what seem like poor financial decisions are actually quite rational given somebody's circumstances or history.
So it is very individualistic based on your own experiences. I want to ask everybody the same question. What's one cognitive bias that you've personally encountered in your financial journey? And how were you able to overcome it? Saundra?
Yeah, so mine is, there's a list of them, right? I'm going to go with the recency bias, right? And so the thing that just happened most recently is the thing that I anchor to, right? And there's also the anchoring bias, but the recency bias is that things that have just happened are likely to continue to happen. And I know Dr. Martha has a much better way of saying that. That's how I understand it. And so how that affects me is that I was raised with a mother who was entrenched in deep poverty. She was one of 12. And So every time she made money, she rapidly spent it. And that's how I was raised. And her philosophy was there will always be more money, right? So she could always get a second job. She could get a third job or a fourth job to do whatever she had to do. I did the exact same thing. So I had to make a different choice to, as Dr. M pointed out earlier, that about that emergency fund, I had to, so there's that thoughts, beliefs, behavior triangle, right? That those three things kind of perpetuate our beliefs, our behaviors, and how we think about money. Sometimes we're able to change how we think about it. Sometimes we're able to change what we believe about it. And sometimes we have to focus on the behavior. In this situation, I had to focus on behavior. So I had to force myself to save, even with a master's in financial planning. I had to force myself to save because it wasn't part of my belief system, and it wasn't part of my bias and how I operated.
How about you, Mariko?
Wow, so many biases. I'm probably guilty of all of them. I would say as an investor, and a more value-oriented investor, right? You have to, one of the things I had to learn is it's very easy to let your winners, to be trimming your winners and reallocating to your losers, but you also have to make sure that your losers are not going to be lost forever, right? And so it's not that thing where you wait for it to get back and break even and then sell it, because usually by then, if it's actually sort of, if you have a dead cat bounce, fundamentally that moment, the company's doing better, it will continue to do better. So it's not about just getting out, but it's just interesting to be able to have to overcome those knee-jerk instincts and really look at what's going on fundamentally with the company. And I had very long holding periods. I've held stock. Our average holding period was 3 years. That seems really long now. I've held stock as long as 10 years. So those were the things that the itch is to take risks, to trim winners and put money towards losers. And one of the ways I overcame that is actually to have a whole study done and data to look at and see that. And then we could actually measure when we were falling prey to those biases.
Follow the data. How about you, Dr. M?
Definitely anchoring bias. This is like a well-known marketing trick. I have to always remind myself when I see something that's, it's on sale this week for $149. That 9 gets me every time. I have to remind myself, we're really talking about $150 here. So just kind of reminding myself to round up.
It's a good one. Yeah, I have a hard time passing up a sale, even when I don't need it. But that's me. All right, let's go to segment 2.
Money scripts are subconscious beliefs about money, usually formed in childhood. Financial psychologist Brad Klontz coined the term to describe how these ingrained beliefs impact financial behavior. For instance, people with a money avoidance script often see money as negative or stressful, leading them to neglect finances or avoid discussions about money. Money worship, another common script, leads individuals to believe money can solve all problems, often resulting in compulsive spending or hoarding. Money status scripts tie self-worth to net worth, pushing individuals toward excessive spending to signal wealth. In contrast, money vigilance centers on frugality and saving, sometimes creating anxiety around financial decisions. Techniques for reshaping these scripts include self-reflection, mindfulness, and reframing beliefs. By recognizing and modifying unhelpful money scripts, individuals can build healthier financial habits that align with their goals and values, promoting financial well-being and stability.
If you all don't mind me getting a little bit personal, Saundra, when you were 15, your mom could no longer afford your family home. How did that influence your financial behavior as an adult?
Well, let's be very, very specific. My mother sold our home, and we moved from a very comfortable living in San Francisco, California, in what's known as the Sunset District, one of the premier districts in the area, into a studio. And it was very challenging. What it did for me is the lack of security. So for me, security was not real, so it didn't exist, and money certainly didn't buy it. So having money it didn't connect to security for me, because I didn't believe security was even possible. So what that meant is that as I got older and was managing my own financial life, I didn't think about saving for the future. I took care of myself now. I took care of my family now. So even when I made a lot of money, I wasn't keeping the money that I made. So that was the biggest thing. But the most dominant thing that it impacted was going from being a very secure, stable, and quite sheltered young person to actually being an unhoused teenager, because I was at 16 years old unhoused. When my grandchildren got to that age, I actually bought a house. I never wanted my grandchildren to be moved out of their home. And so granted, they pay the mortgage, my son pays the mortgage and all of that, but the impulse for me to buy the home was a dominant part of what was going on for me. I really didn't realize it at the time that I was actually housing my 15, 16-year-old self right along with providing for my extended family as well.
Well, thank you for that very real example. Dr. M, you also experienced financial instability as a kid. I've heard you talk about there were times when you were eating bologna sandwiches. Can you talk about your experience?
Sure. I would say the money script for me, how that affected me was that I tended to be money avoidant when I was younger. Money was just kind of happened. I didn't feel that I have any over that, and definitely learning how to save money was really something that I had to learn, not something that my parents modeled for me at all. And I would say, again, very similar to Saundra, even when I was making good money, I wasn't holding on to it. Didn't always have a lot to show for it. And so, part of becoming a financial coach was really pursuing my own passion to be better with money and personal finance. And it's part of what I love about coaching, is basically being a resource for other people who are also on that journey.
With regard to these money scripts, are we trying to completely reprogram ourselves, or is it more identifying so that we understand how they influence our decisions and then can make little micro adjustments?
I think it's important to understand your money lineage. That's one of the things that I do with my clients. Is there's a questionnaire, we kind of map out the family tree and the money stories and memories associated with them. But I think that's really important to understand where you come from, and just to take the time to do that can help you see how that has influence. It's really an eye-opening exercise. And just to share my story, I grew up first 10 years in the French Caribbean. My parents had a rent-a-car business. I grew up in the business. My dad blew up the business. And growing up, I had this thing where, I have to be hyper independent, completely self-sufficient. I'm not gonna, not rely on, I wasn't one of the, I didn't self-raise myself to be like, oh, your husband will take care of you, or your dad will take care of you. It was like, nah, I got to take care of myself. Right? So when you understand where the scripts come from and why, it helps you see your decisions in a larger context. And I think it's really helpful to take that time and just map out the family history.
Can you do that with your clients? What does that look
I
like?
would say,
it's literally a questionnaire, just going through the money stories and the money memories. And then we go through it together. And oftentimes, as we're working on things, we can connect the dots about like certain decisions or certain looking at how the world is viewed and how that informs that. And because people can have very different family, come from very different money belief systems, and which often leads to conflict in the between the parents that the kids live with. So things like that can be very helpful to see.
I think Dr. M was going to say something.
I was just going to say that bringing these subconscious emotions and scripts and beliefs, bringing them into conscious awareness and allowing yourself to be curious about them, I think reduces their emotional power over us. So you can kind of take a step back and be able to make a decision that's a little more grounded in reality, in your current reality, instead of your past.
And I'd also like to add, when we talk about the money scripts and the money types, from the inventory that the Clances and Rick Kaler did, I think that it's really important to recognize that, for instance, in the Black community, if someone doesn't dress wealthy and try to enter through the front door, there's often, come in through the back door. So I think it's important to recognize that something that we might call a script is actually a coping mechanism. So while it might create, an anchoring bias, it might create a money script, it may not be that individual's belief, but being a system within a system within a system. And often when it's a system that thrives on the oppression of people of color and people who have experienced poverty, Dr. M talked earlier about the marshmallow test. Since we're dropping books, I'm gonna follow Mariko on this. Scarcity, the book Scarcity talks about how difficult it is to make good financial decisions when you are in financial distress. And he even goes as far to say it's often impossible. So when we judge people and say, oh, well, just delay gratification, it's very easy to say those things when you're not the person who's grappling with day-to-day survival or lack or scarcity. So I just think, anytime we apply biases, anytime we apply these surveys that have us a certain way, like Money Habitudes is another one that does a really good job of helping us to explore what we believe. But when we start to label ourselves as avoidant or status or all of those things, that we recognize that it's our system within a system within another system. So as a coach and as someone who trains coaches, one of the things that we really focus on is how do we do that with the curiosity that we heard Dr. M bring up, and then also in a judgment-free, shame-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Where there's
Very
judgment,
insightful.
there can be curiosity, right? So that's the first thing, is dealing with shame, which is the judgment, self-judgment, and in order to be able to open up and be curious. And when you can open up and be curious, the information that you're able to see is so empowering, because then you can make decisions from a grounded place and from a place of knowing, like a reality-based place. And that is always step one,
I love it. Let's go to segment 3.
Emotional spending often arises from triggers like stress, boredom, and social pressures, pushing individuals toward impulsive purchases. Stress and anxiety can lead people to spend for temporary relief, while boredom often drives shopping as a form of entertainment. Social pressures, including peer influence and social media, also play a role. On platforms where idealized lifestyles are constantly showcased, comparison often leads to emotional spending, as people aim to match perceived social standards. Targeted advertising heightens these impulses. Algorithms customize ads based on user behavior, presenting appealing offers that align with personal interests. Strategies to manage emotional spending include establishing a budget to prioritize essential needs, implementing cooling off periods to reduce impulsive buys, and practicing mindfulness to understand spending triggers. By developing mindful consumer habits and avoiding the financial pitfalls of emotional spending, people can gain greater control over their finances.
Martha, how does behavioral science explain the dopamine-driven satisfaction we get from spending money?
Oh my gosh. Well, there can be a lot of pathways to that. It can be buying something new, posting your outfit of the day on Instagram for the likes and the shares. It can be the satisfaction of finding a bargain. If you're a thrifter, a thrift store shopper like me, there can be a lot of different pathways there.
Saundra, you have stories working with clients to share, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my very first clients, I've been in this field for 20 years now. I was a career changer into this field. And one of my very first clients, it literally took us 20 years to get the budget. I mean, sorry, not 20 years. I was in the field for 20 years. It took us a full year to get the budget. And the reason it took us a full year to get the budget is because she kept having emergencies in Ann Taylor. And every time she said, "Oh, well, that month isn't a normal month. That month, we can't count that month." So we were trying to find a baseline, right? Using the month, picking a month, using that month as the baseline. She said, "Oh, no, that wasn't a normal month. Some things happened." And so finally, after we did all of this work, and it was a lot of internal work, personal finance, Tim Maurer has one of my favorite quotes: personal finance is more personal than finance. And the way that I describe that is that, our goals are not financial goals. Our goals are life goals with a price tag, life goals with a dollar amount attached, right? And so when we got to what was really important to her, what her status was in her family, in her community, those were the things that drove a lot of her choices. And she wasn't living out what she thought her life should look like. So once we got through all of that, we got to the point where not only did she have an emergency fund, she purchased a home, she had a baby, she did all of the things that she wanted to do, but we had to start with what really matters most. And so it's very easy to trivialize it, to say, you got to know your why. You got to think about your money mindset. Those things are very frustrating for me because it trivializes what people actually go through in navigating the system that they're in, right? Personally, within their family, and then the larger society. And right now, my most requested speaking topic is freeing your financial firefighters. And it's a concept of internal family systems that firefighters are protectors that run in when they're trying to block the pain that an exiled part of us is experiencing, that traumatized young part of ourself. So it might look like shopping, it might look like hoarding, it might look like oversaving. We often, demonize the spender and elevate the saver, when saving can be just as drastic and counterproductive if done from this same place, this wounded place. And so I just think that it's important for us to recognize what the patterns are. And this is where the mindfulness comes in. And we'll talk about that later.
Mariko, whether it's investing or
Saving
shopping.
is just
Go ahead. Go ahead, Martha.
Saving is just deferred spending. And what you're saying, Saundra, I see that a lot with people who are newly retired or sometimes even later in retirement. The message that they've been heeding all this time has been to save, save, save. And now that they're in the place where they've reached the goalpost that they were saving for, they have trouble spending the money that they've been saving all this time for exactly this thing. So
yep.
I like to tell people that saving is just deferred spending.
I like that. Mariko, whether it's shopping or investing, how do you approach financial decision making to remove emotional biases?
I don't think you can, and I don't think you should. I think our emotions and our body wisdom are an important part of the decision making. And if you take it out, and because your subconscious mind also just takes in and is more aware of just what your analytical conscious mind can take in. But I think, if you just strip out emotions, you end up with a lot of bad decisions. I think that's been key. So, and I think in our world that is very quantitative and very, very STEMmy, right? There's a sort of false precision that can come through calculations when all the inputs and the outputs of we live in a very uncertain, very dynamic world. We have to get comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty because that's the only thing we can be sure of. So by definition, any of our decisions, at least investing, are based on very imperfect, ever-changing situations. But I really think you have to have an emotional and body piece embedded in your decision making for it to be healthy. In terms of spending, though, because I do sort of feel the psychologies around both of them are a little different. I have a friend who's a weight loss coach, and we did a podcast talking about how similar the thought patterns are. You eat that brownie, you're in a scarcity mode, you're not going to be eating, you're only eating kale 3 times a day. You see the brownie, you break down because you had a shitty day, and boom, you're like, that's it. Then you eat the whole box of Oreos because you've already blown your thing, right? So it takes up so much cognitive energy to sort of discipline yourself to only eat kale, and then when you blow it, it's like a dam blowing. And it's the same thing with spending. So part of it is just kind of really learning how to see whether your scarcity mindsets and just what does that look like. But anyway, there are huge parallels between eating our eating stuff and our money stuff. And I think we would see the same, whatever our patterns, our baggage, we'd see the same things in our relationship with stuff. It's all a fractal of, kind of the filters, as Saundra has put it, of what we've grown up with in the system, within the system, within the system. And we're also operate in a society that just really wants us to consume, all the messages we get, same way, like, with all the messages we get about ultra processed foods, and we get this thing about consumption and buying. So it's hard, which is why you also need to know how to be grounded.
Really good seeing the parallel between the money and the eating. I mean, I suspect that emotional spending, there's an intersection between emotional spending and financial trauma. Saundra, any tips on helping people to heal from past financial wounds?
Yeah, so I have gone all in on internal family systems. And having been a consumer of many different types of therapy, this has been the single most impactful model that I have experienced, both as a practitioner and as someone who is using it just in my own life. And what I'm finding is that now that I'm recognizing that I have this multiplicity of parts, and that's really the bottom line, that there's a self, right? There's a self energy, and then there's different parts. So I have a people pleaser part, and I have a perfectionist part, and I have a part that doom scrolls on the telephone when I need to distract myself. And so I have all of these different parts. And the thing that I like best about this philosophy is that the self, who we are, our core, our wisest essence, cannot be damaged or destroyed. So they got me when they said that, right? Because at our core, we cannot be damaged. And I spent a lot of my life feeling like there was something wrong with me. And now I understand this distinction between what's called a manager or a protector part that kind of zooms in and says, hey, I'm not going to let you think about that. We're going to have a Reese's peanut butter cup, or we're going to get on the web shopping thing, or we're going to hit one of those food ordering places where they will drop off a pizza at your door, baby. You don't even have to put on clothes, right? And so I know that these things exist, and that those things can pull me away from the trauma or the pain or whatever it is that I'm on the verge of experiencing. And so now that I understand that, I actually can self-soothe, right? And self is the operative word. It's treated as a capital S, right? So that wisest part of me, rather than, as a coach, we hear things like, oh, you got to push down the saboteur. You've got to, step away from that. You've got to elevate. And, this philosophy is very different, where it is more like a mindfulness practice, where you recognize that that part exists, and you investigate and acknowledge, just allow it to be there, and investigate it and understand what is its job. What are you there to do? And then nurture that part. And so your wisest part is, your wisest self is nurturing those hurt parts of you. And so that's really, I know it's not a tip per se, but it is an awareness that we might be broke, but we're not broken, right? We might be struggling, but that doesn't make us bad people. We might be anywhere along the financial structure. What is the word I'm looking for? The continuum, right? Thank you. That's what I was going for, Doc. We could be anywhere along that continuum. From extreme poverty to extreme wealth, and still not be at peace. And so when we navigate what it means to have peace, and how do we facilitate that peace with the choices, how we take care of ourselves, how we feed ourselves, how we use our resources, and money being one of those resources. I think that's the tip that I would offer.
She just drops the mic. Anybody else? That was fantastic. Let's move on. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't believe in judging people or shaming people for the financial decisions they've made. In my experience, everybody is making the best decision that they can at the time with the information and the resources that they have available to them. So basically, everybody deserves grace. We're all just doing the best we can with what we have.
And Andy, I just want to point out what Mariko said earlier that I think is so poignant. People have, who knew that discipline fatigue is a thing? We do the right things, and we've got so many right things to do. And we work so hard to be compliant in all the ways. And I think, for financial professionals, often, actually the way my business got started was so many financial professionals would say, I'm going to fire my non-compliant client. And I would always ask, well, are they better off with you or without you? Is it worth it for you to understand, number one, for yourself, right? Where does your perfectionist part live, right? And then to be able to extend some grace, to Dr. M's point, extend some grace to them as they're grappling with it. And that doesn't mean people have to become therapists. They can learn therapeutic approaches, stay in our lane as financial professionals. I'm not a therapist, and I don't play one on TV. But we can use these techniques to really help people thrive and help them stay with you as a financial professional, and you understand really what's going on. Not just, oh, the client doesn't want to implement the plan, the client won't do what I said. We can hold them with more grace. And we do that by holding ourselves with more grace. If we're really tough on ourselves, it'll be very difficult to extend compassion to other people.
As one of my CFP.
Financial decisions always make emotional sense to the client.
One of my CFP teachers said, with all the changes in technology and AI and everything, you can't outsource empathy. And, you can know the code inside and out, but what your clients need is empathy and the human, the human interaction. Asset allocation, computers can do that. Empathy, not so much. So.
And I love the grace, because no matter where you are, you can always do better. And we're bound to be making mistakes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself the grace. Let's move to segment 4.
Financial literacy is a key component of financial well-being, encompassing knowledge of money management, financial principles, and the skills to make sound financial choices. Studies show that individuals with strong financial literacy are better prepared to manage challenges, save for retirement, and avoid unnecessary debt. Self-awareness also plays a crucial role. Reflecting on personal financial habits can reveal patterns and motivations behind spending and saving decisions. Tracking income and expenses provide insight into areas needing improvement, while setting financial goals help maintain focus on achieving stability and growth. To improve financial literacy, online courses and financial advisors may offer structured guidance. Books like Your Money or Your Life provide strategies for financial independence, and courses on budgeting or investing deepen understanding. Consulting a financial advisor can further tailor financial plans to personal needs. Together, financial literacy and self-awareness empower individuals to build healthier financial habits and reach long-term goals.
Saundra, I've heard you say something to the effect of knowing well doesn't lead to doing well. Can you talk a little bit about how do we emphasize equitable access to financial guidance? How can financial literacy initiatives be made more inclusive?
Yeah. So Mother Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you then do better. And often people translate that to say, when you know better, you do better. I will say not always. You can know better and not do better, right? It's possible to know better. I do things I know when I'm not supposed to eat the second part of that Reese's peanut butter cup, right? I know that having one, I know better. And yet, right? And so the same thing happens with money. And so what I would contend is that financial education that is first focused on where the person is. Number one, I believe that as soon as a child can say, I want, they're ready to start to learn about money. I think it's a mistake to think that it only happens in the classroom or it only happens in a professional's office. I think that we can start early. The rub that I'm seeing, where I kind of have a different perspective of what I'm seeing across the country right now, we've decided that having a financial literacy exam to graduate is a good idea. I don't think that that's the best approach. That's the approach that we tend to use as a country in the US. But I think that helping young people understand what money means to them and all of these things we've talked about, young people, teenagers have money scripts. Right? They already do. Children as young as 8, 9, 10 years old have money scripts as young as they are. And so I think that the earlier we can just have safe, non-judgmental financial conversations, the more likely we'll be to deal with things like the racial wealth gap and the gender wealth gap, the gender income gap, all of these things that are very dominant in the United States society. Early and often, really making sure the same way we teach young people how to brush their teeth and make their beds and tie their shoes, we can teach them that, having things cost money. Money is earned. This is how we do it. This is how we spend it. And we can do that very young. And we don't have to do it by making it their burden. We can do it by making sure that we're elevating the conversation in the household. I think it's good for the primary provider, whether it's parents, family, relatives, and for the young people as well.
I have a client who, and she's allowed me to share this story. She grew up with a piggy bank that was a little devil. It was a very cute devil. She was, a ceramic devil, and it said "root of all evil" on it, right? And she had completely forgotten about this. And I Googled it. I was able to find this thing, and it is very cute. But she had completely forgotten about this. But she was literally, think about it, right? A piggy bank. To save money, that is the root of all evil. And, she does have some money stuff that we're working through, but that's the kind of thing that you see. The other thing that I would also say about messages is the messages that in families that daughters get versus sons about money, and about saving, about investing, about business, if there's a family business, the business talk, and families need to be very aware of what they're doing there. I think would be huge in my book.
Girls
How
are
about you, Dr.
encouraged to save while boys are encouraged to invest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And women actually are financially disadvantaged, so women need to invest more than men do. And
they tend to be better investors. There's a number of research
Yes.
that shows that as well.
We don't churn.
Yeah, I have a storage unit, and my guy, which is a money waste, right? So that's another thing right there. Paying out to have too much stuff. But and he's a day trader. So I was asking about the day trading community and what the demographics and the look like and everything. And he said, well, women are too emotional to be good investors. And let's just say I read him the riot act on that one.
I think when it comes to money, we often know what we should do. It's just like the Reese's peanut butter cup. We know what we should do, but then we don't necessarily do it. Dr. M, are there some behavioral nudges that can help people to stick to their financial plans more effectively?
Sure. Some really well-known ones. So for example, if you can automate something so that you reduce the decision fatigue and you don't have to think about it. That is the logic behind most 401k plans now, so that you can save for retirement through your workplace. The participation rate went way up when they automatically opted everybody into it, and you actually had to make an effort to not participate. That's one way to automate savings. The same thing you can do on an individual level. You can, if you're looking to build an emergency fund, you can automatically take X number of dollars out of every paycheck that you get. So that you're not having to stop and think about it. It's just automatic, and you're basically making it more likely that it's going to happen by doing that.
Interesting. So as we study and discuss psychology of money, there is a benefit to automating and thinking less. Think less,
Yes.
do more.
Yes.
Yes.
I like it.
And
Let's
going
bring it
back
home.
to
Go ahead.
following up on what Mariko was saying, there's a well-known study, I think Fidelity did this, and they looked at what demographics had the best investment results. And it was people who had forgotten they had an account or had died.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like that old adage, a portfolio is like a bar of soap. The less you handle it, the better.
Love it. Let's bring it home and go to segment 5.
Ethical considerations in financial decision-making ensure that actions are not only profitable, but also socially responsible. Principles like integrity, transparency, and responsibility help guide decisions that benefit all stakeholders, not just the individual or organization involved. Responsible investing, such as incorporating environmental, social, and governance criteria or impact investing, supports sustainable growth by promoting social and environmental well-being. For example, ESG-focused investments prioritize companies with strong environmental practices, while impact investing channels funds into renewable energy, affordable housing, and education. Socially responsible consumption also plays a role, as consumers influence corporate behavior by choosing brands committed to fair labor, environmental stewardship, and ethical practices. To align financial choices with values, individuals should clarify their core beliefs, recognize and address biases, and review past decisions to refine future choices. Continuous education can further enhance responsible decision-making, allowing individuals to make choices that reflect personal values and foster positive societal impact.
Mariko, how do you think about balancing profitability with ethical or values-based financial decision-making?
Well, so at the company level, I think the cult of everything should be driven for shareholder value is just led to, it's just not a great way to run a business, because your business is an ecosystem. You've got vendors, you've got customers, you have employees, and the good stewards are the ones that maintain the health of the entire ecosystem and don't try to sort of extract from all the other, to just allocate the benefits to shareholders. I think what from an individual perspective, so on the other side of it, so I think if you're a good company, it's a run for less, not just from quarter to quarter. Compensation is more fair and not extractive, and the long-term health of the goose is what's being supported, not the short-term output in golden eggs, because then that will kill the goose over the long haul. So it really, is a perspective issue, and I think being a good corporate citizen is those companies that seem to have a good compass, over the long haul perform better. I think that's been, there's research that supports that. As an investor, though, as an individual investor, trying to figure out how to invest your money, right? I find sometimes that people bring an orthorexia to their investments about investing in accordance to certain values that is much stricter than the way they actually live their lives, right? So you may have a car, you may use a car, you may, shop at Temu and shine, right? But at the other hand, but you want your investments to be like Caesar's wife, right? And so sometimes part of the conversation is really talking about, again, what we've said for the last hour, you do the best you can, you meet people where you are, and you do the best that you can in the moment, and your investments can certainly reflect those values. But you don't want to hold your investments to a higher bar than you are willing to be personally inconvenienced or live your life with.
I see Saundra smiling.
And
I'm pretty sure that was the mic drop right there. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna say it one more time, Mariko. Rescue me if I misspeak. What I heard was, don't hold your portfolio to a standard that you are not willing to live up to in your personal life. That's what I heard.
Yes.
All right.
Powerful.
I'm gonna sit with that.
Dr. M?
If you're investing in any kind of index fund, unless you've personally gone through and looked at, however many dozens of different companies that fund is invested in, do you really even know where your money is invested?
From a behavioral standpoint, do people feel more financially satisfied when their money aligns with their values?
I'd like to jump in here. I believe they do. That's my experience. I believe that people have a bit of cognitive dissonance when they're doing one thing while saying another. And that's why Mariko's comment was so poignant for me, because I've experienced that. Where I'm investing in the right thing for my portfolio, but it doesn't feel right in my humanity. And so I did have to make some of those decisions. And I was told, oh, well, it's not going to be great for your portfolio. It doesn't perform as well, all of those things, right? But I do think, in my experience in the one-on-ones that I do with people, there is an alignment, not only with what you invest in, but also just how you spend. That's why you see things like boycott this store that does this thing or does not do this thing. And I think the last thing that I want to say about that is that I think we should also just be aware that sometimes our values might be incongruent with our financial well-being.
Hmm.
If family is a very core value for me and supporting family and being connected with community, I then have to be mindful that I don't cause myself detriment by caring for family members, that I don't harm myself in the caring for others if giving is a core value. And so that's a balancing act, because I personally have harmed myself in giving to others. And so I'll always have to make that choice. And so sometimes our values and our financial choices can bump up against each other. And then it's a process that you go through to land wherever it is most satisfying for you.
Absolutely. I see that. I have a client who's just super generous. And, I have to be the designated, jerk in the room saying, that's beautiful. And you need to be able to survive, you need that emergency fund too, put your oxygen mask on first. I also feel like it's easier to express your values as a consumer in terms of, not buying this brand or that brand and for what they stand for, than it is to do it from an investment side. I had clients who had restrictions, and there were services that they subscribed to, and that would then say we couldn't buy XYZ. We knew our company so well that sometimes there'd be something that wasn't on the list but should have been, and I would flag that for the client. So, and also there are funds that create funds because it's a marketing opportunity and not because that they're really doing it. I think it's really hard to just capitalism and markets are so complex and so hard to extricate into a pure, into a pure expression. So I think there's certain things, if you're like, well, I don't do weapons. And there's certainly index funds that will get, that will move certain things. But it's like, I just find sometimes that's an easy place to hold an impossible standards. And, so sorry about that. That was round way around Robinson Barnes. I think it's just easier to sort of not buy fascist brands.
Oh, that was great.
To avoid fascist stocks, sadly. Although some of them are pretty obvious.
Any
I
final
would just
thoughts?
say, I see examples of that with what Saundra was talking about trying to find a balance. You see this a lot with parents helping adult children and not saving for their own retirement. Well, kids can take out a loan for college, for buying a house, for doing lots of things, but you can't take out a loan for retirement. So sometimes you do have to put your own oxygen mask on first. And I just think that's a good example of that.
That is great. Well, I want to thank the panelists and I want to thank everybody for joining today. Inspired Moneymaker, this has been a really powerful conversation. If there's a big takeaway from me from today's discussion, it's that money isn't just about the numbers. It's also about behavior. Even with the many complexities of the financial system, our brain is also extremely complex. So we need the financial knowledge and literacy, but we also have to understand our biases, our emotions, and our money scripts. Without understanding psychology and behavior, we keep making the same mistakes. So the good news is once we recognize how we think about money, money scripts, and better understand these patterns, we can start making more intentional, values-aligned financial choices. So I want to give everybody a challenge this week. Take one step toward improving your relationship with money. Spend 5 minutes writing down your biggest financial fear or belief. And where do you think that comes from? Is it serving you or is it holding you back? Awareness, one of the many things we talked about today, is the first step towards change. So let me know in the comments, send me a message. What did you discover? And if you found today's discussion valuable, please share this episode with a friend. A big thank you to our amazing panelists. Be sure to follow them and learn more from them. You can find Saundra Davis, founder of Sage Financial Solutions and director of financial planning programs at Golden Gate University. You can find her at sagefinancialsolutions.org or ggu.edu. Martha Menard, PhD. You can find her. I've heard her many times say LinkedIn is the best place you can find her. So search for Martha Menard. Martha, anywhere else you want to send people?
You can. I write a free personal finance newsletter on Substack. Let's Talk Money with Martha. You can find me at substack.com, Martha Menard.
Great. And Mariko Gordon, you can find her at marikogordon.com. You can find her at uzumellc.com. Mariko, you also do lots of writing. You do a lot of fun things like feng shui your financial house. Where can people get your writing?
Yeah, so if you go to marikogordon.com, there's an easy newsletter sign up. I do a weekly newsletter. I try to make it funny and helpful and try to keep it. And then I have a series like Feng Shui or Financial House, which was like for 30 days, just a teeny little task. And it's just fun. It's just really fun to share. That's the nice thing about being, in your wisdom years, right? You can be the Baba Yaga in the forest dispensing.
Wisdom years, yeah, funny and fun. And
Love it.
I always hear, I see your posts and I read them, but I also get indirectly from my wife. My wife will tell me, have you read Mariko's latest thing? If you haven't, you need to read it. So that's the call to action for everybody. Thank you, Saundra. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Mariko. The next Inspired Money episode will be financial education for kids, teaching children about money and building a strong financial foundation. I think it'll be a great follow-up to this episode. That will be next week, February 12th at 1 p.m. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everyone.